we're gonna talk about getting getting our identities back, because it's the foundation of so many things. If you don't know who you are, you don't know how to act in your natural setting. So if you've been raised to be something that you're not, you don't know how to act when you get put in your natural setting. So for example, if a lion cub is taken and he's put in a zoo and he's raised in the zoo, and then he's just taken out of the zoo one day and thrown into the jungle, he's gonna die because he doesn't know how to live in the jungle. He hasn't been raised to live in the jungle, and that's something. That situation is similar to what's happened to so-called Black people in America. They've been living in this zoo, and we've been raised in this zoo, and we don't know who we are. Just like the little lion cub who grows up in the zoo, he doesn't know he's a lion. He's never tasted what it's like to be a lion. That's been taken away from him. And it's the same thing with so-called Black people. It's like we're completely dependent on an entire different group of people that are not us. It's no different from a lion in a cage who the zookeeper comes around, and the only way the lion gets to eat is if the zookeeper feeds him. The lion's cool as long as he gets his food, but he's not eating the way the lions in the jungle are eating. He's not living in his nature. He's stuck in this enclosure that looks like a jungle, but it's super small and crowded, and it's not. It's enough for him to run a few laps. It's a jail. I mean, zoos are jails for animals, right? So the same situation is happening to so-called Black Americans. And I don't even say that for all so-called Black people, because Black people live all over the world. But the Black Americans are the ones who are suffering the most. You know, that's not even a fair statement. The Black Americans, but when I say America, I mean all of America, because they're included. They're our family members as well. Black people in general are treated bad, but the problem with Black people in specifically the United States of America, right? The so-called Negro, the colored, right? That Black person, that the African American, that so-called Black person is the most lost of all the so-called Black people in the entire world. The most lost. And it's real. It's very similar to a lion who does not know that he's a lion because he's been raised in a zoo. It's very similar. The reason I say that is because so-called Black people don't know who they are. Just like the lion doesn't know who he is. Right? A lion cub who's been raised in a zoo its entire life does not even know what the jungle is. They think that since they've lived in this cage their whole life, they think that that's what life is. You can't tell a lion about the jungle if the lion has never seen the jungle? You can't tell so-called Black Americans what it's like to live self-sufficiently, because what's the difference between a lion living in the zoo and a lion living in the jungle? The lion that lives in the jungle go get his own food. You can't teach a lion who lives in the zoo how to get its own food. You have to teach it how to get its own food before you can just throw it in the jungle. Right? That's the lion. It needs other lions to learn from before it can just go out on its own. If you was to take a little baby cub, a baby lion cub, and throw it in the jungle with some lions, somebody's gonna take care of that little lion cub. They're gonna take care of that little lion cub. There's something about nature that loves babies and taking care of babies. It's in a woman's nature, and it's not just a woman who are women, animal women. It's in an animal's woman's nature. Because you can get on YouTube, TikTok, any of these social media channels, and you can see cats breastfeeding dogs, dogs breastfeeding little kittens. You know, these things that normally don't happen. You can see that because a mother's nature is to be a mother. So they just had that nature, right? But what I'm saying is that if we compare so-called Black people, Black Americans, to lions, and we just make an analogy here, then we can see how we're dependent on the zookeeper. So-called Black people are dependent on the zookeeper, and they've lived in the zoo for so long that they don't even know there's a jungle. They don't even know anything but their little zoo. They don't know anything but that zoo. And so their minds can't even stretch to imagine what life could be like outside of the zoo in their natural habitat, because they've never even seen their natural habitat because they got raised in the zoo. This is what's happening to so-called Black people. They don't know who they are. A lion cub does not know it's a lion until it gets around other lions, and those lions show that little lion what it's like to be a lion. That's how they learn. Right? They learn from other lions. So-called Black people, the ancient symbol of so-called Black Americans is the lion. Right? We don't really know a lot about symbolism, but you hang around long enough, you're going to learn a little bit about it. You might learn a lot about it. The lion is the historical symbol for so-called Black people. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The eagle is the symbol of so-called white people. This is the historic symbol of so-called white people, is the eagle. This isn't a symbolism video, so I'm not going to get deep off into the symbolism behind that. But what I am saying is that we have to know, a so-called Black person has to know who they are, just like a lion has to know who he or she is to be independent, to live in the jungle, survive in the jungle. A happy lion is a lion that hunts his own food, lives in the jungle, has 4-5 lionesses running around, has a little bunch of kids running around, has his own miles worth of territory, right? Not some little enclosure. That's not a happy lion. A lion isn't happy. A lion is stressed and not happy at all, and don't know why the lion's not happy until the lion gets took to the jungle and learns what it's like to be a real lion. And that's what's happening with so-called Black Americans. We're stuck in this zoo, this concrete jungle, which is not a jungle at all. It's an enclosure. And we don't know how to escape that enclosure because we don't even know we're in an enclosure. We don't know that we are the lion. So we can't go to the jungle because we don't even know. Well, we got to get our food from the zookeeper. How are we going to eat? We got to get ours. There's no way to eat if you don't get your food from the zookeeper. Everybody know that. Yeah, every lion who grew up in the zoo knows that. But the lions in the jungle, see, they don't know that. And it's not like so-called Black people that can't get their own food. Why? Because we know that Black Americans are related to so-called Black Africans. They're our distant family. They're not our close family, but they're our distant family. And we know that so-called Black Africans, they have cities of their own where it ain't no so-called white people. Don't no so-called white people live in the places they live. None. Right? They build their own buildings. They have their own water. They clean their own water. They build their own houses. They have their own farms. They feed themselves, right? They raise their own trees, fruits. They do all this themselves, right? They do all this themselves. There's some stuff that they don't do, which they could be doing, which that's a whole nother story. But they miles advance over so-called Black people, Americans. Why? Because they take care of themselves. They're independent. So if anybody want to be independent, it ain't the so-called Black woman who should be being independent, right? That call for independence is her insides telling her, we need to be independent. I got to be independent. This is the only way to fix things, right? But we need the so-called Black man, Black American, to say, I need to be independent. He the one who should be running around talking about he independent. But he don't do that. And how come? His woman is saying, I'm going to do it if you don't do it. Where are we at? See, we want to be treated like the man, but we only want to be treated like the man. We only want our woman to treat us like the man. We're not willing to be the man in front of nobody else. We only willing to be the man in front of her and complain that she look at us with disrespect. And she like, everybody else is being a lion out here except for y'all. And y'all the biggest lions. Y'all the biggest lions, and y'all ain't doing nothing. Because why? Because we done got tricked into this mind control zoo that we live in, and we don't have to do anything for ourselves. Just like a lion in the zoo don't do nothing for himself. He just sit there all day, don't do nothing, wait for his food to come. He don't do nothing. We don't do nothing. We don't do nothing. So it's called, oh, well, you got to go to work. We do something. We go to work. Yeah, you do go to work. And who's that benefit? Because it's not benefiting you. What you mean it don't benefit me? I live in a big old house. I got me a Mercedes. Yeah. Who built the house? Right? 9 times out of 10, somebody who didn't look like you. Who built the car? 9 times out of 10, somebody who ain't look like you. Where you go to the grocery store at? Who the owner of the grocery store? 9 times out of 10, somebody who don't look like you. So no, all that money ain't doing too much for you. But the thing is that every other group of people in the entire world can say that they got their own grocery store. They can say that they built their own houses. They can say that they built their own cars with their, hey, so-called Black people got to catch up on building the cars, but it ain't nothing. Right? It ain't nothing. It ain't nothing. So my point is, because the Africans been getting done dirty too. We're not the only ones who get done dirty. It's just we get done much dirtier. And there's a reason why. There's a reason why they get treated a whole lot better than us. And it's not because, oh, we got kidnapped from Africa and we came over on slave ships. That's not the reason why. That's not the reason why. Because the only way we was coming over on some slave ship was as the slave master. But you're not going to know that. Why? Because you rely, just like you rely on somebody else for your food, you rely on somebody else for your education. You don't educate yourself. You don't even know your true history. You don't know who you are, little lions, big lions. So it's time to start getting your identity back. You cannot, it doesn't matter. There is nothing more important than knowing what you are, who you are. You got to know what you are. You got to know who you are. You can't do nothing before that. A lion can never be a lion, a happy lion. If that lion does not, first of all, know it's a lion, because if you take a lion out of the cage and just throw him in the jungle, he's going to be miserable. He's going to die. Why? Because he didn't learn he's a lion first before going back to the jungle. First, you got to learn you're a lion first, and then you go back to the jungle, and then you sit up there and live and become happy in the happiest life, live your happiest life ever. And that's the only way you're going to live your happiest life ever is if you put yourself back in your natural position, the position that you was made to be in. Okay? It's like a bird in a cage. Ain't no happy birds in cages. It ain't no such thing as a happy bird living in a cage. I don't care what nobody say. It ain't no such thing as a happy lion living in a cage. It ain't no such thing as a happy, well, we not animals. What you mean? What do this got to do with, we ain't animals? Well, last time I checked, we are living on this earth just like every single animal lives on this earth, and we eat other animals just like other animals eat other animals. Other animals breastfeed their kids. We breastfeed ours. Other animals play with each other, socialize, bark at each other, meow at each other, screech at each other. Why? Because that's their communication. That's how they talk. We not a part of that? Yeah, but we got the biggest brains. No, we the smartest. And that's up for debate. We the only ones locking each other up in cages. Over what? Because we growing plants. We made plants illegal. Right? The chemicals ain't illegal, but the plants are. I mean, I'm not about to get into all that. This video is about getting your identity back and finding out who you really are. You cannot ever grow as a people if you are a lion who was raised in a zoo, and you was raised in a zoo and you was never taught you was a lion. You'll never be happy. You wasn't taught you was a lion. You wasn't taught nothing. You're just sitting in there living. Somebody bringing you your food. And hey, go get you some exercise. That's all we doing. It's like being a prisoner. I mean, it's pretty much that's what we're doing. Even the rich prisoners, they're still prisoners. Why? Because they not living like lions. They do not know what the jungle is. What you mean we gotta go back to the jungle? You trying to just go back in nature and live? No. I'm saying we got to go sit up here and do stuff for ourselves like everybody else in the whole world do for themselves. And how come it's wrong if everybody in the whole world got their own, except for us, Black Americans, so-called Black Americans. Everybody else got their own, except for us. And we don't even know we used to run the whole world. We don't even know that. We don't even know where we're really from. I know where we're really from. I'm one of those lions who's here to teach the other little lions who they really are. But I'm not trying to send no lion back to the jungle. They don't even know who they are. They look at the jungle and be mad. What you trying to take me to the jungle for? I don't know nothing about that. I know, because you ain't never had no zebra. All you eat is this little corn-fed cow meat. They give you a steak and you happy. You ain't never had no live zebra. You eat that live zebra, you might change your mind. Right? You ain't even got a woman in your cage. You might have one, but you sure ain't doing it like the lions in the jungle. Some of them got 9, 10 women. I mean, we have to realize who we are. So my point of this whole thing is, how do we get our identity back? So-called Black Americans got to get their identity back. I know how to get their identity back, and so that's why we're having this conversation. We have to know who we are. When we know who we are, they taught us that in school, and they taught you a lie. They taught you a lie. Now let's just think about how they could teach you a lie about who they are, who you are, if you learned who you are in school, in the zoo. Okay, let's think about this for 2 seconds. They taught you was a slave from Africa. They taught you that the mighty white man went to Africa and he just started corralling black people for hundreds of years, throwing them on slave ships. They didn't fight back. They just got on them ships. Yes, sir. Yes, master. Let's get on our slave ship. They got on that slave ship, came all the way to America. Most of them died because they would just, this is just the story they teach us. Where they would throw over. They all died on the way except for the ones that was left. We the lucky ones, the descendants of the ones who got left, because most of them died on the way, right? So the 20 million who actually made it, those are the survivors, because they really probably took 200 million, right? Because we was all tied down to a slave ship on a boat, laying down flat on a boat for 3 months, wasn't allowed to move. We was just peeing on ourselves, the boat moving, boo-booing on ourselves, the boat moving, right? And only 1 out of 10 maybe would have made that trip. I don't think anybody would have survived that trip the way they tell it. But let's just pretend some of us did, because like I said, this is the story they tell you. This is the story they tell you. They actually have records to prove how everybody got to America. See, that's what we don't know, right? Because one of the places they don't like us to go is to the library and read, right? Especially that graduate side of the library and the university and get none of them books. Good thing for us, we can get on the internet and find those now, right? Start finding out who you are now, right? But we ain't all got to do it at once. We can have somebody do that. We need somebody to do it who's on our side. What you mean? White folks is on our side. They love us. Some of them do. Some of them do. And some of them don't. I mean, you should know that. You should know, why is there Karens, right? Who's Karen? Why is there Black Lives Matter if they all love us? Because obviously some of them don't love us, right? This ain't against none of the ones who do, because I've had many white people, so-called white people, treat me better than lots of so-called black people in my life, right? But they doing that because they doing good. They living in their jungle. They not living in the zoo. They the zookeeper. We the ones living in the jungle, right? And we got a group of people telling me, you're not living in the jungle. You just, all you have to do is just go get yourself a good job and get an education, and you can live like that's your jungle. That's not our jungle. An eagle don't live like a lion. An eagle has, let's talk about nature for 2 seconds. An eagle eats fish that it catches from lakes. Lions don't catch fish from lakes. Lions eat zebras and buffaloes and hogs. And that's what lions eat, right? A gorilla don't eat what a lion eats. They're a lot more similar, but they don't eat what lions eat, right? A gorilla don't eat meat at all. No meat, right? A lion has 4, 5 to 10 different women that are his wives, that he has babies with, and he has the biggest pride possible, wants to have as many babies as possible. This is what he does. If you want to know how a lion live, all you gotta do is watch a little lion documentary. You see how they live real easy. If you think I'm just talking crazy. An eagle, same thing. Go watch your eagle documentary. Start realizing how come so-called white people are represented by the eagle. It make a lot of sense. An eagle has one mate for their whole life. Well, black people have one mate for their whole life. We supposed to be married and everything. That's true, huh? In the zoo, Why? Because when we go over to Africa, to the Africans who don't live in the zoo, they have 4 wives. How does that work? They women don't talk crazy to them. They ain't got no women talking crazy to they man in Africa at all. I'd love to find me a Maury Povich show like the African version. You're not gonna find that. Because they women love they men. Why? Because they lions in Africa still. They take care of each other. They provide for each other. They provide their own food. They are independent, not just the woman, right? Because the woman's leading our call. She's saying, I'm independent. There ain't nothing gonna make me happy until I'm independent. That's what make me happy. She really don't want to be independent. She just making the call because she understand what the hell's going on, where the brothers don't understand what's going on. The brothers should be the ones saying, I'm independent. The brothers should be sitting up here talking about it's time to be independent, but they under such a heavy mind control right now that they can't see that. They can't see it. They don't know. They don't know. And how you wake them up? Well, you got to find out who you are. You got to get your identity back. You have to know you're a lion first before we introduce you to the jungle, because you will reject the jungle if you believe that you should be in the zoo. Boy, I ain't never seen nothing else but the zoo in my whole life. Exactly. So you're not going to understand how good the zoo is, the jungle is. You're the king of the jungle, but you don't know that. You don't know that. Right? You reject your crown because your woman being independent outside of you and you feel like something wrong. So how's she just going to be independent without me and go out here and make more money than me and do... Well, if you was making more money than her, it'd be different, right? But you're not living in your nature, first of all. You're trying to dominate the zoo, and then the zoo was not made for you. It's like the lion in the zoo, trying to dominate the zoo. It's not made. That's not his home. A lion will never dominate the zoo. He's not happy. The zookeeper's going to dominate the zoo. That's who dominates the zoo, the zookeeper, not the animals, right? We ain't animals. You're an animal. You speak a certain language. You live and eat the same foods animals eat. You live on the same planet that the animals live on. You do the same thing as animals do. You just can't see it. Why? Because you don't remove yourself so far from nature that you ain't even a part of nature no more. All you gotta do is go live on a farm for a little while, watch the animals. You find out they just like you. They just a little more. They different, depending on the animal, right? But there's basics about animals and basics about us that are exactly the same. Exactly the same. Right? We can't even raise our own chickens. You start traveling to other countries and you start realizing, wow, man, they not so dependent on the grocery store. They know what to do with the toilet paper run out. They not having a crisis because the toilet paper run out. I mean, the people in charge of the zoo they have a party laughing about that. How everybody respond to there's no toilet paper. They have a party. They know they got everybody on lock when they see people sitting up here responding like that. Because they see they got their little animals that's in the zoo in check. And if them animals get to talking crazy, they're gonna put them in check. Don't make us not feed you. Don't make us clear them grocery stores out. What happens if the grocery store is out? What happens in other countries if the grocery store ran out? Well, nothing. Because first of all, it ain't gonna run out in other countries. Why? Because they feed themselves. They independent. They don't have a zookeeper. They don't have a zookeeper. The only group of people on this planet that have a zookeeper are so-called Black Americans. We're the only group who has a zookeeper. So we got to have our identity back. Once we get our identity back, then we need to go back to the jungle. But we can't even discuss going to the jungle until we know who we are. We have to know who we are first. And we can't get the lesson from the zookeeper. We can't get the lesson from the zookeeper. The zookeeper ain't going to tell you who you are. Just imagine if the zookeeper jumped in the enclosure with the lion and started teaching them how to be a lion. The lion gonna eat the zookeeper. He know better than that. He know better than that. He just leave that lion alone. We're gonna look at you from a distance. A lot of groups of people look at us from a distance. They leave us alone. You don't see them off in our neighborhood unless they making money off of it. They don't take none of that money they make and go spend it on none of our stuff. They don't support us, but we support them. Why? Because we the ones in the zoo. They are zookeepers. Somebody got to feed the animals. Somebody got to feed the animals in the zoo. They just show zookeeper. Right? It's time to get out of the zoo. It's time to know who you are. The only way you're going to get out of the zoo is if you know who you are. The only way you're going to learn who you are is if you have people if you have your people teach you who you are. Because the people who set up the education system in the first place, right? Let's just go back in time a little bit. When the modern day education system was started, right around 1914. That's when it started. It got real advanced by the 1960s. That's when it started. Now, what was going on between 1914 and 1960? Oh, the Klan was in full power. They weren't hiding it. You watch some old TV shows and watch some old newscasts and you'll see, read some old newspapers. Oh, they wasn't even hiding it. They didn't hide it. Talk to some of your grandparents, right? Especially young people. They don't even, they didn't grow up with a daddy, most of them, right? Mama at work the whole damn day. They don't even know old people. It's a big disconnect, right? So they don't get this information. But they need to get their information. And if he didn't have somebody older to grow up with, then find you somebody who's got your interest in mind. And listen to that person who look like you, who got your interest in mind. But the first thing you need to do is you need to find out who you are. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. Because I know who you are. I know you're a lion. I know where you're from. I know your original language. I know your original religion. I know your original culture. I know who you really are. I know how you got put in the zoo in the first place. See, that's something ain't nobody. The zookeeper ain't going to tell you that. Ain't going to tell you how you got put in the zoo. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm here for. Who are African Americans really? Really? Who are we? We're not slaves from Africa. That's a Santa Claus story. We're not slaves from Africa. I would just tell you this whole story right now and give you your identity back just like that. If it was possible. It's not possible. You know why? Because I wrote a book about it. The book is about 500 pages. I know people don't really like to read this generation. This is just, I understand. We like audio books better, and I made something even better than that. I got a little video book. Got pictures to go along with the whole book. But it's 30 hours long. Right? Go to lostalongtheway.org and check it out. I need you to get your history back. I need you to get your identity back. The only way you're going to get your identity back is you're going to sit down, listen to my book for an hour a day. If you got a job, 2 hours a day. If it's super interesting, which it is, listen to it. Learn who you really are. Learn who your people are. This is the reason why we don't treat each other right. Because we don't know who we are. We don't have our identities. We need our identities back. We are not slaves from Africa. I know we the original people of the land. We the Indians. We not Indian. Indian's another name for somebody else who's stuck in the zoo. You're not no Indian. That don't mean you're not original people from America. Because a lot of you are. A lot of you are the original Americans. You're the original people of America. You're not only the original people of America, though. A lot of your ancestors don't just come from America. They come from Europe. They come from Asia. They didn't even start coming here from Africa until the 1850s. Until the 1850s. And I can prove it. I proved it that Africans did not start coming to America until the 1850s. The people who were coming to America was so-called black Europeans. And they wasn't coming on no slave ship. And if they did come on a slave ship, they was the owner of the slave ship. And they had white people on that slave ship. And white people was the slaves. So-called white people. What? Oh, you really tripping now. What he been taking? He crazy. No, but I can prove it. And I did prove it. And you need to know that. Why? Because you don't know who you are. You don't know your language. They tell you when you go to school. They tell you when you went to school. What they tell you? You know we took your language from you. We don't know what language you speak. It was one of them African languages, one of them jigaboo languages, booga booga. You spoke booga booga. That's what they teach you. I went to public schools. I know what they teach. Well, the Africans, you know, they carry spears and they do dances in circles, and right? That's your religion. It's that devil religion, that voodoo. Hoodoo. Mess with that. Ain't that the religion they be putting the pins and dolls and be killing people? Where's my white Jesus at? Oh, in the name of Jesus. It's what we do. This is what we do. Right? Because we don't know. Because we don't know who we are. Because we don't know our religion. This is what they teach you too. This is what they teach you. They teach you the slave master, the almighty white slave master, came and took you from Africa, brought you to America, stole everything from you, raped your women right in front of you. You didn't do nothing about it. You just sat back and I hope you don't get me next. You ain't do nothing. This is what they teach you. Is that how it happened? Absolutely not. That's a Santa Claus story for people who believe it. It's a Santa Claus story. It didn't happen like that. Not even close. There was a time when so-called black people were under the heavy hand of the so-called white man. Absolutely. But see, that didn't start until July 4th, 1830. And we don't know that. That's why July 4th, we celebrate July 4th for a very different reason than so-called white people do. That is their white Independence Day. They used to be our slaves. Not some of them, all of them. America was built to be a prison from the get-go. But we don't know that. We don't know why they lock us up. We don't know the reasons behind racism. We don't know where this thing really started. We don't understand what institutionalized racism really is or where it comes from because we don't know who we are. We don't know how great of a people we are. And the only way we're going to find that out is by getting our identity back. There's no happier animal. There's no happier lion than the lion that lives in nature. This is the happiest lion. It's always going to be the happiest lion. It's always going to be the happiest lion. And you can't tell a lion in a zoo who was born in the zoo anything about the jungle. He usually look at you crazy. What is you talking about? Anybody who says we should not feed ourselves, anybody who says we should not do for ourselves, has to have some type of agenda against us. Why? Because everybody on the entire planet, with the exception of so-called Black Americans, has their own land. They have built their own houses. They built their own factories. They sew their own drawers. They eat their own food. This is what they do. Not some. If I go to Mexico, guess what Mexicans is doing? They growing their own food. They feeding their own people. They got their own factories. They got their own malls. They got their own stores. They got their own name brands. They got their own all of that. If I go to Mexico. If I go to Peru, they got the same thing. If I go to Argentina, they got the same thing. If I go to Brazil, even though Brazil got majority Black people, they in the same situation as us. If I go to Zimbabwe, they got the same thing. If I go to Ghana, they got the same thing. If I go to Congo, they all, everybody. And I'm not just talking about white people. I'm talking about so-called Black people. So-called Black people are independent and all over the world. Chinese, Korean, you name it, Burmese, Indian, Pakistan, all of them, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, all the people of the world are self-sufficient with the exception of who? So-called Black Americans. So-called Black Americans. We the only ones. We the only ones.